Hi, let's talk. So, in case you haven't noticed, there are a lot of things happening in the US right now. First of all, there was the killing of George Floyd, and that's sparked protests all around the nation against police brutality and racism. And it's also Pride Month on top of that. And there has been federal legislation that has been blatantly transphobic. So, yeah, let's talk about it. First of all, I just want to preface this by saying there were two black trans women that were killed just last week, in the middle of Pride Month, in the middle of national protests about racial injustice. Their names are Dominique Remy Fells and Rhea Milton. Let's take a moment to remember that Pride is intersectional. There would be no Pride without black people. These Stonewall riots in the USA that brought basically any rights to gay people at all, that movement was led by gay and trans black people. And so the fact that in the middle of Pride Month, there is so much violence and so much hatred against trans people and against black people, it's completely inexcusable. A little bit about history. The Stonewall riots were started by people who were really mad at the police because the police were harassing them for no reason, and they were just fed up with the treatment that they were not human beings. The fact that this discrimination against gay people, against black people, against trans people still continues today is horrific. The Stonewall riots happened 50 years ago. Black people were at the front of the lines. Stormé DeLarverie, Martha P. Johnson, these were the people who were the first to start fighting the cops there. And these cops, by the way, were unnecessarily brutal. That's why the protesters turned to violence. And that sounds a little bit familiar to today, doesn't it? Basically, the idea that people are pushing for when we say ACAB is not that every single cop is a bad person. We're saying that cops, just because of the fact that they are cops, are complicit in a racist and unjust system. Police in the United States were created as a way to police slaves. And so the history of policing is based heavily on racism. And that's why the police are so racist today. It's because it comes from a system that was inherently racist, and we've done nothing to change that. When people say ACAB, it's an attack on the whole discriminatory, terrible system. When people say defund the police, we don't mean get rid of the police immediately, because that would cause anarchy. But the idea is that we want to slowly get rid of the policing system, because the current policing system obviously isn't working. There is no accountability for police. No one receives the consequences for what they do. We've given them so much control over our lives, and they shouldn't have that control. We should be funding things like mental health services, housing for homeless people, education services, all of these things that police are expected to do. I mean, they don't have the training and the resources necessary to do that. So if we want to defund the police, we're going to pour that back into other resources that could be more readily used to help people and perhaps prevent the underlying issues that require policing in the first place. Have you heard about the crack epidemic of the 1980s? So that was a whole ploy by the US government. Crack cocaine was actually less concentrated than powdered cocaine, but it was much more heavily penalized because guess who was more likely to own crack cocaine? That's right, black people. And so Ronald Reagan and his government wanted to put as many colored people into prison as possible. And they did it under the guise of the war on drugs. Now let's flash forward to the present. It's Pride Month 2020. Trump just rolled back healthcare protections for transgender people. So now healthcare places are legally allowed to discriminate against transgender people. This kind of discrimination is not new, and it's pretty obvious now that it's intentional. Trump was actually going to make a campaign rally speech in Tulsa on Juneteenth. And if you don't know what that means, Juneteenth is known in America as Freedom Day, which is the day that we commemorate slavery ending. Tulsa is one of the locations of African American massacres in the US. So the fact that on Juneteenth, a day that we commemorate the end of slavery, Trump was going to do a campaign rally in the location of one of the nation's massacres, that tells us something about our president. Seeing as black trans people, especially black trans women, have a lower life expectancy, the fact that healthcare protections are being rolled back in such a dire time as this, it's a sign that Trump doesn't care about us. The government doesn't care about our lives, or people who are in Trump's administration, I should say. And that's a problem. So, in these truly awful times, let us not forget that Black Lives Matter, that every single day is a fight for equality and for justice, for people of color, Black people especially, for people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. It is a battle. Don't let any one day be your day for activism. Every single day is a day to fight. We are the ones who can make the change. We have to. So that Black people, so that trans people, so that women don't have to feel unsafe literally wherever they go. So that they are not continuously discriminated against, suffering wherever they are, whatever they do. This shouldn't be the world that we live in. This shouldn't be the country that we live in. America is a nation of equality, a land of the free, so they say. Nothing in these recent weeks has shown that. We need to be better, and we need to make a change. I have linked a ton of resources in the description. Lots of Black organizations, lots of queer organizations, and lots of Black queer organizations, because once again, if your pride is not intersectional this month, you can leave. We will keep fighting until everyone is truly free.